Afternoon conference. I don't think the drug I took was hallucinogenic. It was psychic, because I told you it'd be sunny. Okay, this is a really important session. I think everybody in the room knows that this is our main campaign at the moment. We are pushing really hard on this, and we're going to start the session by playing a video.
My husband was a Metropolitan Police officer. He was in the service for 22 years, so he would have got his long service medal. In 1998, the worst thing happened. He went to work in the morning and basically didn't come home in the evening. I broke down in tears. I just couldn't believe it. And then I was told that I had to tell the children, and that was absolutely horrific, because I had to go upstairs, sit them on the bed, and I can still remember to the day my son's face. It was a devastating time in my life. I wasn't aware, to be honest with you, and my late husband wasn't aware either, because he always said to me, "You and the children will get looked after." And that was, the big security of the police pension for him, that his family would get looked after. When I entered the new relationship, I suddenly realised on it that if you cohabit or remarry, you lose your pension. And I actually couldn't quite believe it. I thought, what, so I'm meant to stay on my own for the rest of my life? I didn't divorce my husband. I loved my husband. We still loved each other. He died. I didn't want him to die. It's like saying, oh no, you've got to remain on your own for the rest of your life, or otherwise we'll take your security away. People would be so shocked by it. My son even rang me the day the announcement was made. He said, "Oh Mum, that's great, you've got your pension back." And I said, "No, it doesn't include me, Sam. It's like we're the ones that have been sidelined and left behind." It sounds awful, but I think, are they kind of thinking, oh, right, well, they won't be about much longer, so we don't have to worry about them? That's a horrible thing to say, but sometimes that is exactly how you feel. Why should anyone be left behind?
He loved the job. He absolutely found his niche when he did that. In 2002, 15th of August, I got a knock at the door, the one that you never want to have, and he'd been out with another officer and they tried to stop a van coming through from West Midlands, and he'd been killed instantly, and his crewmate died later in hospital. That was the most devastating thing that I've ever had to go through. The children were 3 and 9. Having to explain to them what had happened, and their whole world that they thought was a safe place came crumbling down. We got to the point where we decided that we wanted to get married. My husband is a widow also, and so in order for us to provide a family unit again for our children and potentially have a child of our own, we decided that we would have to give up our pension. But it was a price that we were willing to take, because we just needed to have that family unit once more. And so we got married in 2009. It was the best thing we ever did. The family unit became whole again, and in 2014 we had a daughter. She's nearly 5 now. But that would have never have happened if we'd have waited. I'm glad that the people that have been able to get the pensions have got it, because they've fought long and hard to get it. Andy paid 11% of his pension, and we had to suffer for that, because it's a huge chunk out of your wages to have to do, and we went without a lot. We did have to basically live pay packet to pay packet. He worked and he paid into his pension. We suffered for that pension, and I think I should have rights to to have it, you know, even just to keep the kids in the comfort that we would have been able to give them when he'd retired. I'm mad more at the government that they haven't made it more fairer. If anything, it makes me feel that Andy's death is lesser. It's time to change it now.
Conference, you don't need me to tell you that there's a glaring inequality throughout the UK in the treatment of police widows, widowers and their pension entitlement, simply because of were their deceased spouse served as a police officer, the nature of the death of their spouse, or the date of their remarriage or cohabitation. How can it be right that these police officers' survivors and their families are treated differently just because of where they happen to serve within the UK? As you've seen from the presentation, this archaic pension regulation has had and continues to have a profound and lasting effect on those widows and widowers who are left behind when their loved one dies. Often, the choice between future financial security or future happiness in a family life is an impossible one to make, and is one which these survivors should not be presented with at all in this day and age. Who has the right to make someone choose between either bringing their family up with a mother and father or sacrificing a family life to ensure that their children can be brought up in financial security? The UK government have told us that in order to ensure that public services remain affordable, it's not possible to pay pensions to widows and widowers in England and Wales who do not meet the current criteria. However, in a recent report issued by the Government Actuaries Department, it stated that between 2012 and 2016, 5,631 police pensioners who died were identified as having no dependent. This means that despite paying for survivors' benefits, funds paid into those pensions will never be claimed. By comparison, in the same period, just 77 widows' pensions cease due to remarriage or cohabitation. It looks to me like they are saving paying out a lot more just because scheme members die with no dependents, and to continue paying widows their pension, in my view, would be small fry. At this point, I'd like to introduce Holly Lynch, MP, who is a real keen and avid supporter of NARPO, and in particular in our Widows Pension for Life campaign. Holly.
Well, thank you ever so much, Steve. It's a pleasure to be asked to come and join you today, and this is a campaign that I do feel very, very strongly about. I'd just like to commend NARPO for the work that you do representing retired police officers, and again for the strength that you've shown in representing this campaign in Westminster as well as right across the country. I am the Member of Parliament for Halifax, but my father is a retired police sergeant and a NARPO member. I've still got serving police officers in the family as well. And that's really shaped my politics coming into this role. Going into being the Member of Parliament for Halifax was a bit of a whirlwind for me, but I've really tried since then, since being elected in 2015, to get a sense of what life is like for officers out on the front line, and there's only one way to do that, is to get out with them. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Protect the Protectors campaign that I started and why the Pensions for Life for Widows and Widowers is a very logical extension of that campaign. Protect the Protectors is about looking after officers out on the streets, and there's been lots of individual conversations that we've had to have with government about what officers need to be safe so that they can keep us safe. But it's not just about looking after them. It's about, in those unthinkable circumstances, how we look after their families, their loved ones, their spouses, and their children and dependents as well. So out on the beat with a single crewed officer in the summer of 2016, just a routine shift, passed a vehicle, it flagged up on AMPR, we should speak to the driver in connection with drugs offences. Just a very routine stop that very quickly escalated. The police officer got out to speak to that driver. He was forced to lock me in the police car for my own safety when things escalated very, very quickly. And I faced with watching him on his own face an angry mob that had suddenly appeared of 20 people, draw his baton, rang 999 from the police car to call for backup for that single crewed officer. Upon ringing 999, heard, "Please hold the line. Please hold the line," for what felt like an eternity. And to have felt like I'm going to sit here and watch this officer take a kicking and locked in a police car and there's nothing I can do about it was absolutely harrowing. Again, as the daughter of a retired police officer, there were times when my dad came home black and blue. My mum was also a nurse in A&E and she had her own stories to tell about being on the front line with people that weren't always particularly receptive of our dedicated public servants trying to support them. I really took that experience back to Westminster, secured debates and worked with the Police Federation to say what needs to change so that our officers have got the support that they need, so that first and foremost they are safe in keeping our communities safe and doing the dangerous work that we ask them to do on our behalves. Thankfully, we have been able to build a real public swell of support for more protections for officers. That's been very cross-party. We've worked with the trade unions, we've worked with NARPO, we've worked with the Police Federation and across the emergency services. We created a new offence of assaulting an emergency service worker, which toughened up the sentencing that was attached to assault PC and extended it to other blue light services as well. But in the current context, actually we are seeing a great degree of societal change. Under years of austerity, that means increasingly police officers are out on their own. They're very vulnerable when they do that. They're encountering people who are very frustrated, often in a crisis around drink, drugs, mental health, and it does put officers in a very, very vulnerable position when they are responding to 999 calls and emergencies. Again, on our behalf, we ask them to do that work. The campaign that we have run has been about delivering that law change and increasing the sentencing, but actually it's much, much broader than that. And there are an awful lot of things that our officers need in the future to make sure that they can do their jobs and do them well. Some of that is around numbers. There's no getting away from that, and I do welcome the announcement that we are having 20,000 more police officers. There's still some detail to be ironed out around the support that forces are going to need to deliver that in reality and in time frames that we would like to see. But personal protective equipment, but also protections for officers in terms of support when they are taking decisions on our behalf in very extreme and often dangerous circumstances. But when the unthinkable happens, and we have seen over this summer the 2 attempted murders and the murder of PC Andrew Harper, for their families who were left behind, I can't think of anything more harrowing than having to think about building a future in those circumstances. To know then that there are financial implications and penalties for anybody that after a period of time does start to think about what the future looks like without that loved one is just absolutely unreasonable and should not be government policy. Now, what I do just want to stress, and like lots of other things happening in Westminster at the moment, is there's an awful lot of cross-party support for the changes that NARPO and all of us would like to see. I know that we're going to go into a bit more detail with Beth and Steve about some of the legalities and the logistics of the campaign going forward, but I just want to give you a sense that there's an awful lot of support for this. It is just about winning that very specific argument now with Treasury to unlock that funding. I have had the pleasure, but what has been an incredibly moving experience of meeting some of those families who have lost loved ones on the front line, including the widower of Sharon Beshenivsky, who was the incredibly brave West Yorkshire police officer who died a number of years ago. I have just been asked to stress why this campaign is important in principle, and actually you didn't need any words from me, having seen those videos, to understand why this campaign is important in principle. But having met with those families and those individuals, it really does just bring it home to all of us why this really does matter. And the amount of money that we are talking about, as Steve has already said, any family that finds themselves in this position is one family too many. I think we can all agree. But it's not a small group. It is a small group, as much as it's too big than any of us would like to see. So the money that we are talking about is not a significant amount for this government to unlock and to just do the right thing. I'm really keen to continue to show my support for this as it moves forward and goes through Westminster, to continue to be that liaison between yourselves and NARPO and that cross-party support. I know we've had a number of events. There's been a flurry of letters going backwards and forwards to key ministers. We have had the change in lineup of some of those key ministers and the cabinet, and we're just seeking to reaffirm those relationships so that we can move this forward. But for the passion that I have for keeping our police officers safe in the work that they do, and that fight's not over yet, there's certainly a lot more to go. I really do want to just stress that the Protect the Protectors campaign does extend beyond those officers on the front line. It is to their families, their children, their spouses, and that's why I do feel so strongly about the Widows Pensions for Life campaign, and anything that I can do to support you going forward, you've certainly got that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, conference, and thank you, Holly. Obviously, we will be liaising again in the future about parliamentary activity. The next person to speak is Beth Sidwell, who's from our Parliamentary Advisors Connect. Obviously, this isn't done with my brains. I need somebody telling me where I need to go, what I need to write, and connect to the brains behind all that. They direct our campaign. So I would like to introduce Beth Sidwell from Connect to speak next.
Thanks very much, Steve. As Steve said, I'm Beth, and first of all, I'd like to thank you very much for inviting me. I was here last night at the dinner, and I'm sure everyone had a really nice time, and it was lovely to be here with you all. So just initially, I thought I'd just introduce Connect. So we are a communications agency specialising in public affairs, which includes government relations, media relations, influencing of public policy, amongst other things. We're based in the heart of Westminster, in Millbank Tower, not far from Parliament, and I'll be in trouble if I don't tell you that we're award-winning within our industry. We're a proud supporter and partner with NARPO, and we've worked together in some form or another for a number of years now, and I'm sure some of you may have previously heard from some of my colleagues on the later life ambitions work that we also do. But we also work with NARPO individually, not just on this campaign, but we've done some event management. Some of you may have come to the centenary celebrations in the House of Lords earlier in the summer. We also provide political monitoring and opportunity spotting, which forms part of a wider strategy of influencing Parliament and government. And we're also building a base of parliamentary supporters like Holly, who can help raise the profile of NARPO and the things that matter most to you. But particularly important for this campaign has been the message and strategy development. So we were introduced to the Pensions for Life campaign earlier this year, and we put together a strategy for engagement. With any campaign, you need to build support at grassroots level, and whilst the impact of the police pension regulation has been raised in Parliament before, this was some time ago, back in 2015 and then later in 2017. So we therefore needed to start by reminding MPs about the campaign, bringing it back onto the agenda. And that's because we know that when government make changes, that it's often as a result of pressure coming from MPs like Holly or peers in the House of Lords, and in turn, those MPs are responding to their electorate, the general public. And obviously, we've had to do this against the difficult backdrop of Brexit and compete for the attention of MPs when they're busier than ever. So we'd particularly like to thank Holly for being here today, considering everything that's going on at the moment. So, how do we capture MPs' imaginations? Well, one helpful way of doing it is to host a parliamentary drop-in. This is when we book a room for 2 hours in Parliament and we invite MPs and peers to drop in at any time within that 2 hours to come and chat to us to find out more about the campaign and pledge their support. This makes it really easy for them to come along because when they're voting, they're often not allowed outside of the parliamentary estate. But it's crucial with these types of events that parliamentarians are not hearing from people like me, but they're hearing from you, the people who've been directly impacted, because that makes the messages more powerful, but it also means that those who have been affected have a chance to have their voices heard. That's why we were delighted to welcome widowers and widows alongside NARPO's NEC members to participate in the drop-in and encourage them all to write directly to their own MPs in advance to invite them along. Now, the main aim of the drop-in was to raise awareness amongst parliamentarians and identify and secure the champions for our campaign. And in order to do this, we produced a briefing which set out the campaign and why change is needed. We gave this to attendees on the day and asked them to take it away and to follow up with key actions which were included within this. And I'll come on to some more of those actions in a little while, but one of them initially was signing our pledge board on the day, which you can see here. And you might be able to pick out some signatures from that. So I know some of you who attended the drop-in are here today, and I'm sure you'll all agree that it was a very busy 2 hours with lots of people coming and going. We had nearly 60 MPs and peers from across the political divide turn up to show their support and learn more about the campaign. Now, that might not seem like a lot of people when there's 650 of them, but we usually would expect somewhere between 20 and 30, so we were very pleased. And amongst those that attended, there were senior figures, including a number of shadow and government ministers. And you can see the then Home Office Minister Caroline Noakes here. We had the chair of the Work and Pensions Select Committee, Frank Field, who's in the middle there, as well as the then leader of the Liberal Democrats, Vince Cable. After the drop-in, we followed up with all of them and asked them to keep the campaign fresh in their mind and take this further action on behalf of NARPO. So our first key ask was that they go away and sign our early day motion, also known as an EDM. And some of you may have written to your MPs before asking them to sign EDMs, but for those of you who aren't familiar with them, an EDM is used to put on record the views of individual MPs or draw attention to specific events or campaigns. And Holly put this EDM down for us. And by attracting signatures to this EDM, you can use it to demonstrate to government the level of support that you have on a particular cause or point of view. This is also a helpful tool to ask of those MPs who weren't able to attend the drop-in on the day, because it's something that they can quite easily do from their offices afterwards. And since it was tabled on the 1st of May, we've had 55 signatures, which we've used as a tool when making the case to government. And we would still encourage you to ask your local MP to sign the EDM if they haven't already. You can find a draft text to write to your MP on the NARPO website. We also asked MPs to submit written or oral questions, which have to be answered by the government. Within our briefing, we included a number of different questions, for example, asking about steps the government has taken to ensure widows and widowers aren't discriminated against, as well as the cost of reinstating these pensions to the public purse. And you can see here just a few that were tabled. Again, although the responses received from government to these questions continue to toe the party line, this is a part of a wider initiative of building pressure on the government from different angles. So as well as using these parliamentary mechanisms like EDMs and tabling written and oral questions, we have also just been asking MPs to get behind the campaign by writing directly to government. So we've been writing directly to government as well, but we know many of them have done this already to put on record their support for our campaign. Prior to the drop-in, we invited the Policing Minister, Nick Hurd, to attend. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to come, so after the drop-in, we wrote again to further request a meeting and demonstrate the clear support that we had received, both via the drop-in and via the EDM. And such is the way in politics. There was then a reshuffle, and we're then dealing with a whole new set of people. Mr. Hurd left government, and the Home Office now has a new team, as Holly alluded to. So our ministers, for the time being at least, are now Priti Patel as Home Secretary and Kit Malthouse, who is the new Policing Minister. And if you don't follow NARPO on Twitter, or if you do follow NARPO on Twitter rather, you may have seen a letter that we sent last week to Priti Patel, which was prompted by supportive comments that she'd made about police officers and their families. And again, within this letter, we called for her to rectify this unfair policy. So I would hope that Steve and the team would agree that we've had a great amount of success so far this year with the Pensions for Life campaign, but this is obviously something that we want to continue to draw on as the year goes on. And whilst governments may be changing every week, we still have an untapped resource in the MPs who are both influential and who haven't engaged so far in our campaign. People like Yvette Cooper, who's the chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, which scrutinises government policy. And that's why we'll be continuing to conduct a contact programme, trying to arrange meetings with target stakeholders to specifically discuss this campaign. We'll also be trying to secure a debate in Parliament, which the Policing Minister will have to formally respond to. And we'll draw on the support we've already gained from MPs and ask them to continue to advocate for this campaign in Parliament. There's also a further opportunity around the creation of a police covenant. The new Home Secretary has indicated that she's asked her department to work on this, and we will be pressing the government to recognise that the creation of this covenant should go hand in hand with a change to the police pension regulations. We'd like to continue to work with all of you as NARPO members in our fight for this campaign, and we'll share ways in which you can get involved across the coming months. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Thanks, Beth, and thanks everybody at Connect. You can see there's quite a lot of work going on in the background to try and raise this issue amongst parliamentarians and get some traction to actually make them make a change. What else are we doing? Well, the NEC recently agreed that we should take legal advice to ascertain if there was a claim in law to challenge this regulation. As a result of that decision, we consulted Mark McGee of Lexant Partners. Mark is one of the foremost lawyers in this area of law in the UK. He's a fierce advocate on behalf of those individuals who have been culpably mistreated by the state, ranging from military personnel to individuals who have been abused but who do not have capacity. He's achieved a number of landmark results and continues to forge the development of this area of the law on behalf of his clients. His initial advice to us was that there was the potential for a claim under human rights law. And consequently, a conference was arranged, both with Mark and leading human rights barrister Conor Gearty, who is a professor of human rights law at the London School of Economics and Political Science. He's a fellow of the British Academy, a member of the Royal Irish Academy, a bencher of Middle Temple, an honorary bencher of the King's Inn, and has honorary degrees from University College Dublin, Sacred Heart University, USA, Brunel and Roehampton Universities in London. He's appeared as an advocate specialising in public law and human rights in all the higher courts. Now, I think his CV speaks for itself. Professor Gearty told us that he is of the opinion that we have a sound case to pursue this matter under the Human Rights Act, and in particular, the right to fair proceedings under Article 6, the protection of property, under Article 1, Protocol 1, and the right to respect for private and family life under Article 8. We are now in the process of gathering as much information as we can, both from those widows, widowers and families of those who have been affected by this regulation. And we've compiled questionnaires for members to complete and return to our solicitors. That process is ongoing. The forms are on our website. If you know anybody that is affected, please encourage them to fill them in, because the more we get, the more examples of how this has affected people our solicitors will have. I've also personally made 43 Freedom of Information requests to each police force to obtain further information in relation to the issue. And I have to say, some of the responses I've had are just bewildering. Quite a few forces have responded saying, it's not my responsibility, it's the pension administrator, which is total tosh. The chief constable is the pension authority, not the pension administrator. So obviously they've had a response back. And another common response is, we can't get the information because it would cost us too much to get it. Well, that is another complete load of tosh, because they have to supply the information to the Home Office anyway, when the Home Office asks for it. So obviously, they've had a complaint put in as well. So we are still waiting quite a number of freedom of information request responses. Once we've got all that evidence and the information, and it's all got to be assessed by our solicitors, relevant witness statements have got to be obtained. And when we've done that, the next step will be to formulate a protocol letter of claim and send it to the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State will then have to make a formal letter of response to our solicitors. And at that stage, we will review the prospects and consider whether formal proceedings can and should be commenced at court. I'm really pleased to inform you that the Police Federation of England and Wales have now joined us in this legal action, and they will add their considerable weight behind the argument. And I know John's had to leave, but thanks to the Police Federation for joining us in this. At some point, surely the government will see that this regulation is outdated and that all police widows and widowers throughout the United Kingdom should have the right to retain their pension and retain their dignity without having to make that difficult and almost impossible choice. You can rest assured that we will continue to pursue this matter to obtain parity for police widows and widowers throughout the United Kingdom. The floor is open for questions. It generally was a presentation of where we're up to let you know, in particular the legal stuff and the parliamentary, what we are doing and where we're up to with it. If anybody wants to any questions, all three of us are happy to answer questions. So if anybody has, we have got a roving mic, but thanks everybody for listening, and I hope you now understand what actually we have been doing. We're not just sitting serenely like a swan, we're paddling like mad underneath.
That's what I was just about to say. Any questions? And there are two people, should be two people, wandering around with the mic.
Good afternoon. Derek Munday, Manchester and District. I'd love to write to my MP about all these things, but he's a member of the executive. He doesn't do anything except talk about animal welfare. In 9 years in Parliament, he's submitted one written question and has never, ever signed an early day motion. What can I do with him?
I'm not sure you want the answer.
Do you want me to lie to that one?
Yeah, go on, Beth.
Bernard Caron, and I know... Sorry. Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Derek, I'm guessing you mean by the executive that your MP is part of government? Yes. Who is he, out of interest? Okay. That's very difficult. They aren't, by procedure, able to sign EDMs and submit written questions because it's about having collective responsibility with the government, so they can't criticise the government that they're a part of. Unfortunately, when you're in that situation, other MPs aren't able to act on your behalf. So it's a difficult one, but I would say that you could encourage as many of your friends and family to write to their MPs if they have different MPs. You can also still write to him, and he does still need to respond to you as your constituent. He can't put those kind of formal requests into government, but he does have a responsibility to respond to you directly. And Holly may have some other thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, he won't publicly criticise government when he's a part of government, but actually it means that he is a part of government, which is the decision-making body. So internally, actually, his voice is still very, very powerful. So I would write to him, ask to see him, make the case, and ask him to internally make that case to the Prime Minister, to his colleagues, because the fact that he is in government actually means that he is influential, even though publicly he might not be engaged in some of these activities that we're talking about.
I think I have the same with my MP, actually, Derek, and I'd try and meet her at the surgery, and she's a bit more amenable in her surgery than she is via letter or formal correspondence. And it's just about getting the message home.
Mine really isn't a question because it's been answered by my colleague. Sorry, Karen from Maidstone. I've got the same difficulty. I now reside in sunny Southport here, but I still got affiliation with Kent. But I write to the MP here for Southport, and he doesn't even acknowledge my letters. It's hopeless. It's like knocking on a closed door. You just feel you're wasting your time. And that's the situation where I think so many of us are in, where you know, our hands are tied. There's not much we can do about it. But I would like to say that at least I am very, very appreciative of the help and the support we're getting from you on the NAC on this very emotive subject, of which I feel personally very, very strong. And I applaud all the effort you are making, Steve, and metal to your shovel and all the rest of it. Good luck, carry on. I hope I live to see it brought about before I pass this mortal earth. Thank you.
Thanks, Bernard. I, for one, know that you will carry on persevering with this battle. I know you that well. You will. You'll not give up, and that's what we should all do. We should all keep raising it with our MPs, no matter how futile you think it is. The more momentum we get, the more MPs that are aware of it, the better our traction in Parliament will be.
And always ask for a meeting. If correspondence is not going anywhere, ask for a meeting with your MP.
Telephone their offices as well. Yeah. I used to do that job as working. But you have to just get on the phone and pester them.
Yes, good afternoon. Eric Smith from London branch. You might tell from my accent I didn't join the police in London straight away. I served in Glasgow for 4 years, contributed to the pension scheme in Scotland. When I transferred to the Met in 1979, my pension contributions transferred with me. The inequality of this is that because the majority of my service was in England, should I die, my wife then remarries or cohabits, she will not get that entitlement that she's legally, I think, entitled to. So can you take that forward? Because there must be hundreds, if not thousands, of cops like me up and down the country that served outside of England or Wales and then transferred in.
Just for clarity, in Scotland, unless it's a death on duty, the situation is the same as England and Wales. It's only a really good example for us is if somebody served in Northern Ireland and has transferred to an England, Wales or Scotland force. That is a really good example because Northern Ireland have got the pension back irrespective of the cause of death. In Scotland, they've got the pension back if the death was on duty.
Robin Hobbs from Bristol branch. My experience with my MP was completely different to those that I've spoken to. I wrote her a letter explaining what I wanted to see her about. She gave me half an hour of her time in the council house in Bristol with her PA. I presented her with all the evidence from our organisation about the issue with widows' pensions. She was extremely interested. Her name's Kerry McCarthy, by the way. She was extremely interested and very supportive, and in fact did write to the parliamentary office which was responsible for all of this. I'm not sure whether it was the Treasury or the Pensions Department. Problem was, she got a letter back from them with statistical information on it, which was completely at odds to the information that we, as the NEC, present to us. And it seemed to stop there. She said, this is the information I've got back. I can't take it any further. So I'm just wondering whether the information is actually coming from the ministers in question or whether it's coming from the Civil Service Office that underline those offices and whether they are the people that we should be talking to in terms of getting the right information back about widows' pensions.
I think the information that I used in my presentation came from the last scheme evaluation. So that's an official government report. A lot of the information that contained in the, how can I put it, the corporate response letter is based on government actuaries' supposition. And if I'm not an actuary, but some of it looks ridiculous to me, but I wouldn't be able to prove it or not prove it. But it does look like gobbledygook. But I'll have a look at that, Robin, because their answers are different to the information that's contained in the report. They do not factor in that over 5,500 former police officers that die don't leave a dependent. That isn't factored into any of their responses.
Thank you. If that's the end of that particular section, I will thank Holly and Beth and Steve for their informative presentation and for those people that have asked questions. We'll see where we go from here. Thank you very much indeed. While people are leaving the stage, I'll just go through a little bit about announcing the names of the elected reserves to the NEC, who will be running till Conference 2012. North West Region is Steve Lloyd, North East Region Graham Cassidy, Midland Region Steve Groves, Eastern Region Martin Gregory, South East Region Norman Liggins. And having said that, on the notes I've got that Norman Liggins, Secretary of East Kent Branch, who is recovering slowly from colon cancer. And I was asked if I would mention that so that people out there who know Norman are aware that he is recovering. South West Region is Nick Wire. The Wales Region is Helen Lloyd-Jones, and the London Region is Bruce Wilson. The full list of NEC reserves is on page 26 of the programme. Now on my notes it says the wellbeing debate. I don't know where your speakers are, Kate. Yes, I do know now. They're all appearing.
I'll sit one in if we do it in the order, eh? So let the lady from Romford sit in. How are you doing? Nice to see you. You well? We've got our running order set. How are you doing? Nice to see you. I think you're starting, yes.
Am I? Yeah. Do we just press the button?
I think green